Davante Adams makes the New York Jets Super Bowl contenders right now. Am I overreacting?
I'm going to tell you this, Hunter. I do think you're overreacting, but I am interested to hear what you have to say. So, try to sell me on this. Let me hear what you got.
So right now we know the Jets defense really hasn't been the problem. And currently, per NFL.com, the New York Jets have a 55% chance to make the playoffs, which is a little bit more than you would expect from a 2-4 team. But the fact of their division, no one's really running away with it right now. I believe the Bills are in the lead. The Jets are 16th in passing yards per game right now, 20th in EPA per pass, 24th in yards after catch over expected, which is really, really bad. They're third in pass play percentage and pass plays, tied fifth in passing touchdowns, so they are effective when it comes to getting the touchdowns done. 28th in air yards per attempt, so they're kind of dumping the ball off at a high rate, and I don't really blame them right now. I mean, the connection has not been there with Garrett Wilson at this point. It did look a little bit better last night versus the Bills, but still overall didn't look great. 22nd in average separation. Rodgers is 26th in completion percentage and 21st in adjusted completion percentage. So even accounting for drops, it just has not been on target this year. And Rodgers is 30th in completion percentage over expected at minus 6.1%. They also have an interim head coach. I think the fact that people think once they got Davante Adams, oh, this is the real team now. You have an interim head coach. You are playing with a roster on an offense that was not playing that well. And does this move, I mean, I think the Jets become more competitive, but does this move put them over the top? To me, it does not.
No, again, that's kind of my thing is, and here's what I want to say. First thing off the bat, this is already what I'm concerned about, and I think multiple Jets fans are already concerned about as well. Kind of just reading between the lines here, seeing what I've seen already on social medias and news outlets. I think there's a point where you say to yourself, okay, yeah, Salah wasn't the guy, as we already knew, we already discussed. That was already a thing last week. But there's a thing now where now that Ulbrich is your head coach and he's not just the defensive coordinator and he doesn't just get to focus on the defense every week. Well, first week, right, where he's the head coach, you just allowed 359 yards. And again, I know it's the Bills. I know.
But
So it's not like
the Bills didn't look good against the Texans on offense.
they didn't look good for weeks in a row. And here's the thing too, I'm going to say. People are like, well, they only allowed 20, 23 points. Well, it really should have been 29 points. We had 2 missed field goals. And if anything, plenty of penalties along the way that completely adjusted the scope of the game, in my opinion, plenty of times in the Jets' favor. So it's kind of like in reality. Oh, and a Hail Mary in which was just Teron Johnson made up for it at the end of the game, so I can't say anything bad about the man. But let me just put it like this: if Teron Johnson wasn't looking at the floor trying to box out I'm trying to remember who Lazard. That's already 7 points off the board for the Jets. So this game like really was kind of like more like 29-13. So and I know that's not how football works, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. So my thing is kind of like the Jets are just in a really awkward position, and you know this. We all know this, and that's kind of the big thing that I want to say on top of it is it's like you know my whole rant about how yeah, having weapons is cool and all, but having weapons should never be the reason you're winning and losing games. Like, if anything, it should be the cherry on top of the fact that you already have a good team. I don't think you should go weapon shopping when you clearly have other issues outside of it. And there certainly are clearly other issues outside of the fact that, yeah, they're not loaded with weapons, but they certainly don't have bad weapons. And that's kind of my thing is it's like to just sit here and be like, all right, we already have a very relatively solid offensive core. And I'm not talking about the O-line. Let's be clear. The O-line's not playing good ball. But in the structure of our skill players, adding another skill player who, yes, we know about Davante's peak. But again, that comes in question where, and again, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in here and lights it up just like he used to. I wouldn't because of the connection they have. But there is inherently a question you have to ask yourself, like, is Davante still that guy? And again, I'm not saying he is or isn't. I would lean towards that he is. But if he comes in and he's not what you expect, but you just gave up a 3rd-round pick and you already were in an awkward situation, the media is already on your case. It's not like it's going to change no matter what. But let's just say it like this, and I'm going to let you go back from here. If the Jets don't turn the corner and this move isn't what flips the switch, I think we're in a position where, I mean, you're having a complete reset from staff, basically top to bottom. You're having basically probably a reset in the GM position because it's not like Woody's going to fire himself, but we're in a weird position here, Hunter. And by we, I mean the Jets. I'm not affiliated with the Jets, but I'm just speaking for them in this case. The Jets are certainly in a weird position. One of the weirdest positions in the entire league. I will say, if you're a Jets fan, yes, you should be excited because if you didn't trade for Davante Adams, you're just stuck in the mud, kind of like what he was saying. But now you could be stuck in the mud with even more capital out the door. And that's kind of how I feel about this. But you got to take shots in this league, I suppose, and that is what the Jets are trying to do.
I mean, I guess my thing too is the O-line hasn't been playing that bad either. They're about middle in the pack in pass and run block. But this kind of feels to me like the last kind of reset, okay? You change play callers. You fire the head coach. You're probably going to go trade Mike Williams. I saw a report of that today. Like,
I don't know if anybody wants Mike Williams.
I don't think so either. But it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, this isn't working, let's change. This isn't working, let's change. This isn't working, let's change. And at some point, it's just like fundamentally flawed. And that's why it's not working. It's not that these changes are going to mean anything. And the reality is, Rodgers hasn't been playing bad. And I wouldn't really blame necessarily like Rodgers for his play. But in the play style, in the way he wants to play on the offense, requires guys like Davante Adams, requires guys like Allen Lazard, who he already has chemistry with. Now, does this help Garrett Wilson? I think it does, because you're getting a certified weapon in Davante Adams, and now Garrett Wilson isn't going to be the top concern of the defense. So I actually think we'll see a rise in what we see out of Garrett Wilson. I mean, even Lazard stepped up last night, but it's just one of those things where it's like, if it doesn't work, and this is what you talked about it a little bit earlier today, if they don't go deep in the playoffs, they don't win a playoff game, there's zero chance Joe Douglas is back. But then I also think, okay, so what? You have a new GM. You'll have a new head coach next year if you don't promote Ulbrich. You're going to have a 41-year-old quarterback and then Davante Adams if they rework the contract. Like, it's really going to be dependent on if Aaron Rodgers stays around next year, because if Rodgers isn't there next year, why would Davante Adams stay around?
Well, and I think to that point, I'm glad you brought that up, Hunter, because I'm pretty sure that's part of the reason why Davante, and I think he already, look, let's be realistic. Davante does know the writing on the wall. He understands that if he doesn't come to the Jets and go absolutely ballistic, that there was already a slim chance he was going to get the money he was expected to regardless. Well, you're certainly not going to get it from anyone else if you don't come here and go ballistic. And he also understood that there was basically zero chance of that happening in the Raiders, because they are the Raiders. That situation is abhorrent for a receiver of his magnitude. So I completely understand why that it's kind of like he was like, yeah, sure. I mean, why? First of all, I want to go play with Aaron Rodgers. Number two, I'm not going to get the money regardless, unless I go ballistic over there in New Jersey. I'm kidding, but you get what I'm saying. I always like to throw that out there. But the whole thing is kind of like, I think to wrap it all together, what I'm trying to say, so I'm not rambling, it's very likely, no matter what, unless they win the Super Bowl, it's very likely, in my opinion, that this is probably the last of Aaron Rodgers. And if not, next year certainly is. And it's kind of the thing is Davante Adams is probably on the same page. Like, you know what? Let's go have one last run. Like, if he's not there next year, I'm certainly not there next year. And I have a shot in free agency, and I have a shot to really boost my stock for free agency. It's kind of like all parties involved understand that.
What
not
it is,
it's like
yeah.
one last hurrah, but like, it kind of is how it looks. It's kind of is how it looks, because to all the things you also just said, how high of a chance is it that Ulbrich is the coach next year? How high of it is a chance that Joe Douglas returns? Like,
it just feels like it feels like another team where they're just like directionless if they don't win the Super Bowl. Like, really, like if Aaron Rodgers isn't there next year, you don't have a head coach, you don't have a GM that's built a winning culture, and like you're trading picks like they're candy. Like, you got the 2 second-round picks for Aaron Rodgers. You trade a third that's a conditional second, and yes, it has a lofty kind of goal to get to be a second, but it still could be a second. And then you have third-round pick Malachi Corley sitting on the bench. What is he doing? Like, it's one of those things where it's like, this team really doesn't make sense if the Rodgers-Adams thing doesn't work out, and I think we all knew that, but at the same time, it's like, I know you have to put all your chips in one basket, but it didn't really feel like a basket that was ever going to fully work.
No, yeah, and like again, we'll close out shortly. But here's my final thoughts on the situation when I see this is where I start getting concerned about the mental state of the fan base, because what Joe Douglas has put these people through is tragedy. And again, to the points of everything we just said, I'm not taking away that yes, they basically did have to trade that pick for Davante, and yes, that's the only right thing to do. And I am on board with that. That's objectively a fact. However, I see a lot of Jets fans commenting, "Well, guys, like it's just a third rounder. Like look what we've done with our third rounders over the years." But that's a problem. Like that's the whole point of everything we're trying to say. That comes down to ownership. That comes down to your management, because good teams are spending their third round pick every year and hitting on it 3 out of 4 times where they're going to find a productive starter for down the road. The fact that the Jets haven't done that in however many years in a row is a reflection of the culture of the team. And that goes back to everything we just talked about.
As always, if you don't know ball and want to know ball, be sure to subscribe, leave a like. Let us know in the comments if you think Davante Adams makes the New York Jets Super Bowl contenders. And I think that's the question we have to ask, Dobbs, because if you're not trading for him to make a Super Bowl run, why are you trading for him?
Yep. No lie, Hunter.
All right. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you.